Welcome back to Buy Your Mom an iPad. I'm Riley Murdoch, and this is the iPad 11th Gen. They've made 11 of these things, and they've made them so many times, they're just like, you know what, let's just make it look the exact same. Let's just change the inside. Now, you may have noticed that recently we unboxed the iPad Air M3, and you might be looking at that and looking at this and saying to yourself, that looks like the exact, that looks the same. Not only does this look similar to its direct predecessor, the iPad 10th Gen, but it looks almost the exact same as the iPad Air M3, which came out alongside this. Just to show you, here's that M3 iPad Air. That's the same iPad. I guess they're thinking that, like, you know, iPads are basically just so good now that we basically just have to use this. This is a good body. Why fix what ain't broke? You know what I mean? Wait a second, you might be thinking, if they're the exact same body pretty much, maybe it's compatible with the Magic Keyboard attachment for the iPad Air, but actually no, the magnets are not in the right spot, and also it doesn't have the pogo pins that connect, so I guess not. However, it is compatible with its own Magic Keyboard Folio attachment. But before we talk more about this actual iPad, let's see what's in the box here. We got the standard paperwork, doesn't come with stickers anymore. We've got a 20-watt charger, and we've got the USB-C cable here, nice and sleeved, which I discovered in the other video is about 1 meter long. Okay, before I get distracted by any other tangents, let's take a quick look at the outside of this thing, which, as far as I can tell, is pretty much identical to the iPad 10th Gen, the predecessor here. So let's look at them both together. On this side, we've got the volume up and down buttons. On the top, we've got those Touch ID power buttons. The 2 speaker grills, only one of which actually has speakers in them. On this side, we've got those pogo pins. So they do have, they do work with their own accessories, just not the other ones. Use the right accessories, the ones that Apple tells you to use. Okay. On the bottom, we've got another 2 speaker grills and USB-C. Now, unlike in the higher end iPads, this USB-C port only supports USB 2 speeds up to 480 megabit per second max. So just be aware, that's what you're getting with the base model iPad. And yeah, as we can see, like, the design on the exterior is very, very similar for these. One is a different color though, so note that. But the 11th Gen does come in the same colors as the iPad 10th Gen. They have kind of more colorful colors as opposed to kind of the more muted options for the iPad Air and iPad Pro, because when you have less money, you're allowed to have fun with it, because otherwise you'd just be sad. There are some differences between these iPads though, which we'll be able to see when we turn them on, and oh, look at that! It's a word from our sponsor.
Paperlike. If you thought that nothing could replace that sketchbook that you carry around with you, think again. Transform your iPad into the ultimate writing and drawing companion with Paperlike 2.1, a uniquely designed screen protector that uses proprietary microbead technology called nanodots to emulate the stroke resistance of real paper. It lets display light shine around and through the screen protector with minimal refraction, so you get optimal picture quality and little to no glare. They even have a 100-day satisfaction guarantee, so if you're not completely satisfied or messed up while putting it on, you can get a free replacement or refund. Pick up a Paperlike today at the link down in the description.
Now, the obvious difference between these two iPads is that the iPad 10th Gen runs the A14 chip, and the iPad 11th Gen has been upgraded to the Apple A16 processor, which is the same one found in the iPhone 15 lineup, although some of them have the Bionic chip, but this is the A16 non-Bionic. So that's obviously gonna give us a performance upgrade, or hopefully. Labs will tell us about that in a minute. But Apple also says that, they're the same hardware-wise, except for this screen. They say that the iPad 10th Gen has a 10.9-inch screen, and the iPad 11th Gen has a 11-inch screen, the same screen size as the iPad Air, 11-inch, because there's also a 13-inch. but I am trying for the life of me to see any kind of difference here. And the bezels look the same. The size of the actual body is, oh, nope, it's the same. I thought for a second I was tripping, but nope, it's the exact same. What are we talking about? What are we smoking here, Apple? In terms of the displays being 0.1 inches different. There's the difference in chips, giving an upgrade. We're gonna look at our benchmark data from labs in a second, but the more interesting thing to me is the fact that Apple has dropped the price again for the base model iPad. They upped the price to $450 for the iPad 10th gen. For the 11th gen, they've dropped the price back down to $350 and doubled the starting storage from 64 gigs to 128 gigs. So, as I said in the iPad Air M3 video, you know, I give Apple a lot of crap over on TechLinked for their whole ecosystem thing, antitrust, you know, they're fighting against regulation, trying to keep their closed garden stuff going on, walled garden. But when it comes to their budget, low tier products, they're doing some okay stuff. Kudos again. All right, let's look at the performance numbers. So like I said, this has the Apple A16 in it. It actually has one fewer CPU core than the A14, which had 6 cores. This thing has a 5-core CPU, but it has 6 gigs of memory to the iPad 10th gen's 4 gigs of memory. So we got 2 more gigs of memory, 1 fewer CPU core, but despite that, we're getting better performance here than on the A14. In Geekbench single and multi-core, we got 22 and 23% better, respectively. And there actually wasn't enough RAM to run our normal 3D Mark Steel Nomad Lite GPU tests. So labs ran Solar Bay instead, and we saw a 22% performance boost there as well. More GPU power, more fun. In our 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme Stress test, we got a 25% increase in performance. And one interesting note is that the A-based Apple chips seem to throttle less than the M series chips in the iPads. And maybe that's because there's just less power going on in general, but one thing for your mom to note. And for our battery life test, we got about the same amount of battery life for both iPads, A14 and A16 versions, got around 9 hours. All right, but numbers are one thing. What is it like to use? I mean, you know, this is kind of the question every time you start looking at the mid to low tier iPads as opposed to like the iPad Pro. The iPad Pro exists as this kind of showcase of all of the most advanced stuff that Apple can fit into a tablet. And here, it's more about like, what's the bare minimum we can do without getting complaints from people? Turns out the bare minimum is still actually really good. I mean, like, I'll show you. It's good, you know? Like this is a $350 tablet. It's the base model iPad. Things look nice and sharp. The speakers sound pretty good, you know? Like, actually, I wanna compare them directly to the Air M3 speakers. Okay, I think, is that louder? I don't even know. They sound a bit different. Okay, so the iPad Air M3 speakers have a little bit more body to them. There's a little bit more bass to them. These sound like a tiny little bit more tinny. And I'm hearing like a little bit of distortion a little bit more distortion at the max volume than I hear over here. Both of them aren't, you know, they could be better, but again, tablets. Pretty good speakers for tablets. The fact that I just recently tested this out and we're like, those speakers are pretty good. And then I played this one and I was like, oh, those are pretty good. I actually had to put them side by side to tell that there was a difference. Maybe I'm dumb. All right, while I have them right next to each other, I will say that the displays for both of these iPads, the iPad Air M3 and the iPad A16, spec-wise are about the same. They're both same resolution, LCD, 60 Hertz, IPS, and they're both rated for 500 nits of brightness, but our labs team actually found that this iPad Air M3 could achieve 540 nits So, I mean, yeah, kudos to this guy. The 13-inch iPad Air M3 can actually do 600 nits, apparently, but we don't have that one in studio, so we can't verify it. The other difference with the displays is this. This one has an anti-reflective coating, and this one does not, which you can see actually. When we look at one of our studio lights here, you can see that the reflection on the M3 is a lot darker than the one on the base model iPad. So there you go. Science. So other than that creature comfort of the anti-reflective coating, I mean, you're dealing with a user experience here in terms of like, you know, the display at least, that is very, very similar between this $350 iPad and that $600 iPad Air M3. But what about the cameras? Let's look at that. So on paper, Apple says that the hardware here is pretty much the same as the hardware in the other one. So let's check it out. Yeah, okay. That is a photo. I mean, it looks pretty good, and which is exactly what I said about the other one. That's a 12 megapixel Apple software processed camera. What about the selfie mode? Oh, that's way better. Okay, you know what? I didn't call it out as much in the previous video because I was just so taken aback by how insane I looked. But the processing seems a little strong on this one. I know it's like just a 12 megapixel camera, but I'm always kind of surprised that the processing and the overall quality on selfie cameras seems to be like much worse than the quality on the back camera. I feel like these days, most people are using their selfie cameras a little bit more than their back cameras. I don't know. But, you know, it's fine. It's a tablet camera. Is it good for FaceTiming your grandma? It's gonna be good, okay? Chill. I was thinking about this whole buy your mom an iPhone thing because in the last video I did on the iPad 10th gen, I made a big joke about how I was gonna buy your mom an iPad, and don't worry, it's already happened. It's in the past, forget about it. But B, the whole Tim Cook buy your mom an iPhone thing came about because Android and iOS didn't support the kind of like rich messaging features that were required in order for you to send high quality photos and stuff. This guy was saying, I can't send my mom, you know, good photos, or she can't send them to me. And Tim Cook, in all of his wisdom, replied, buy your mom an iPhone. But there's another thing where I'm gonna give kudos to Apple. They're gonna support encryption now, even on RCS, after they added RCS support a while back. And now just regular messaging between Android and iOS devices is gonna be pretty good. I'm not actually sure about whether that's fixed the like ultra compressed image problem with the messages, but maybe the whole buy your mom an iPad, buy your mom an iPhone thing is invalid at this point. So as much as I've criticized Apple in the past for kind of inching the iPad closer and closer towards, you know, like a full computer experience, only to kind of pull back at the last second, they seem to be earnestly trying to give product options to their consumers that make sense in terms of price to performance. Would it be nice to have an iPad that costs less than $350? For sure, but them just taking the price down by $100 and doubling the storage are things that they should have done a while back. They shouldn't have never hiked the price to begin with. But the fact that they're doing it now, along with the $600 Mac Mini and, you know, the iPad Air M3 is like more expensive, but it's still pretty decent. It feels weird for me to say that I like what Apple is doing in this segment, but I do. And this right here is a mid-cycle refresh. We got basically the same hardware as before with new internals. And I'm excited to see what they do when they do a more substantial upgrade, because I want iPads to get weird again. Let's add features that don't belong there at all, okay guys? Let's get wacky. Tim, let's get wild. And you should go wild on that subscribe button to this channel, ShortCircuit. Hey, thanks for watching. If you're looking for something else to watch now and you were confused about all these references that I was making to the iPad Air M3, watch my ShortCircuit on it. It'll all make sense, I promise.